Oxidation and reduction can be defined in terms of gaining and loss of oxygen. Gaining of oxygen is an oxidation process that is called an oxidation reaction. Example of gaining of oxygen is burning metals in air, where metals will gain oxygen to give you metal oxide, like magnesium with oxygen to give you magnesium oxide. Magnesium has been oxidized here. The loss of oxygen will give you a reduction reaction. Example of loss of oxygen is when copper oxide react with carbon, that will give you the copper metal and carbon dioxide. Copper here has been reduced because copper lost oxygen. Redox reaction refers to this reaction when oxidation and reduction takes place at the same time. Normally for any reaction, if there is an oxidation, a reduction will take place at the same time because if one element or if one atom is oxidized, another has to be reduced in the same reaction. This is why they are called redox reaction. We defined redox in terms of gaining and loss of oxygen. However, for a wider definition, we can define it in terms of the loss and gain of electrons, where oxidation is the loss of electrons and reduction is the gain of electrons. Let's have some examples of redox reaction and how to write their equation, writing the redox equation. Reaction of metals with acids is a type of redox reaction. For example, when iron reacts with hydrogen chloride to give you iron chloride and hydrogen gas, this is a redox reaction where iron has been oxidized because it lost two electrons. So iron has changed from being the elemental iron with no charge into ion with two plus charge. So it lost two electrons. So it has been oxidized. While hydrogen has been reduced because it gained electrons because it changed from hydrogen 1 plus to hydrogen atom with no charge. Iron was oxidized by the hydrogen in the acid, while the hydrogen was reduced by the iron atom. To write the half ionic equation, you only show the movement of the electrons. So half ionic equation will show you each atom separately which has been reduced or oxidized. So for the oxidation, half ionic equation for the oxidation process, we can see that iron has given us iron 2 plus 2 electrons. While for the reduction, the two hydrogen plus gained two electrons to give you the hydrogen gas. The ionic equation, we can write the ionic equation. If we add these two half ionic equations together, that will give you that iron plus 2 hydrogen plus will give you iron 2 plus and hydrogen. The two electrons have been the same on both sides of the equation, so they have been completely cancel each other out and removed. The chloride here hasn't been added at all in the ionic equation because it hasn't undergone any changes during the reaction, and this is called the spectator ion. Another example for redox reaction is the halogen displacement reaction. So the more reactive halogens will displace the less reactive one from their salts. So we have chlorine, which is more reactive than bromine. It will displace bromine from its salt. So when you react chlorine with potassium bromide, that will give you bromine and potassium chloride. In this case, chlorine has been reduced as the two chlorine atoms have gained two electrons to give you the chloride ions, while bromine or bromide and the potassium bromide has been oxidized because it lost two electrons to give you bromine. The half ionic equation, bromide give you bromine and two electrons, and the chlorine with two electrons will give you the two chloride ions. Adding these two together will give you the ionic equation with chlorine plus two bromide give you two chloride ions plus bromine. The potassium here is the spectator ion and it's not added in the ionic equation. A third example is the metal displacement reaction, where more reactive metals will displace less reactive metals from their salts. So if you react iron with copper sulfate, iron is more reactive than copper, then that will give you the salt of iron, which is iron sulfate plus copper metal. In this reaction, iron was oxidized as it lost two electrons to give you iron 2 plus, and the copper was reduced as it gained electrons. So the copper gained electrons to change from copper 2 plus to the copper atom, which is not charged. The half ionic equation, this is for the iron, and this is for the copper with the gaining of the electron. The ionic equation comes from the addition of all of these two, iron plus copper 2 plus, to give you iron 2 plus plus copper. The sulfate ion is the spectator ion and it's not written in the ionic equation.